Welcome back. Welcome back. My husband, 37, and I, 32 female, have been married for the past 10 years. Our marriage was basically all anyone could ask for, except the fact that we couldn't have our own kids. Even with that going on, we still went strong. And my husband never brought any child from outside to have an heir. When my sister-in-law fell into the habit of drugs and a family intervention was had, my husband and I were more than happy to take care of her kids in the meantime. The kids had nowhere else to go because their father was abusive, and it led to their mother's drug addiction as a form of escape. The kids were very young, the oldest being 10 at the time, and I don't think they even remember what had happened in the past. I had always wanted kids of my own. Therefore, I treasure those moments with her kids, and we raised them as our own. I hoped that it would never end. The kids were safe, comfortable, and happy. My sister-in-law was in and out of rehab for 2 years while we raised her kids. In the middle of the 3rd year, she seemed to be gradually getting her life together and looked forward to being with her kids again. We were so accustomed to being their parents that it became hard to let go. We offered to take care of her kids while she tried to figure out her direction in life. That was mainly my idea because the thought of losing the kids that I had grown so accustomed to raising to a recovering addict drove me insane. What worried me the most was that she would return to her abusive husband, and one day he would turn his aggression onto the kids. But we had no choice but to give them back to her, as the court had deemed her fit to be a parent. My sister-in-law and I have never gotten along since, and she kept her distance along with the kids. Fast forward to last year. My husband got his nephew, the oldest child of his sister's kids, a summer job at a friend's auto repair shop. He would be staying with us for the summer, just like old times. Or so I thought. It's been 9 years, and this man has grown and has grown well into his looks. Initially, I didn't think much of it until I noticed his physique and the way that he would look at me. I noticed how much he had grown almost instantly when he walked through the door. That thought disturbed me, so I tried to avoid him as much as possible. But my husband wanted to recreate old times, forcing us to be in each other's presence. I tried avoiding his flirting and advances, but it became too much, especially being home alone with him most of the time, and him walking around the house shirtless and how his flirting gradually became more direct. It was more than just a sexual relationship. He was someone I could talk to and share my feelings and concerns with, someone who understands me. Everything was going great. I had the best of both worlds. A stable and supportive husband and a spontaneous and exciting lover under one roof. That was until a family reunion 2 weeks ago. The nephew got very drunk and started to become handsy with me. I tried to stop him and remind him where we were, but he wouldn't listen and kept telling me how much he was in love with me. People in the family noticed, and my husband noticed. When my husband came up to him and confronted him, he tried to fight him off him. He started to brag about our sexual exploits to my husband, insulting him and taunting him, which got him a beating from my husband. After a few family members managed to pry my husband off him, he confronted me, and I brushed it off as his nephew being drunk and spewing nonsense. Said nephew came sauntering into the room and continued to brag, and told my husband that he should leave me because I deserve better. I wanted the ground to swallow me at that moment. My husband was getting angrier, and a crowd was starting to form, so I had no choice but to admit that I was in fact having an affair with his nephew. He was disgusted, especially at the fact that the affair was with someone I had at some point considered my child. I felt bad about that, but we haven't seen each other since he was a child, and we're not blood related. My sister-in-law is now accusing me of grooming him, even though I hadn't seen him in years, and he's now a 19-year-old young man. My sister-in-law has spread this rumor throughout the family, and my husband is nowhere to be found. He's not giving me a chance to explain. How do I deal with these serious accusations? How do I fix this situation? I think people in my neighborhood have heard the rumors because I'm getting strange looks from people, and when I walk by, they pull their kids away from me. This is also causing problems for my career, as I'm a private tutor for challenged kids, and people don't want me near their kids. Do I sue her for defamation? My husband came home today. He came home with his lawyer and handed me divorce papers and demanded that they be signed as soon as possible. I didn't even have a chance to say anything. He left before I could get over the shock. Apparently, he's been staying at his brother's house. A few minutes after he left, police came to question me about my relationship with my husband's nephew. His mother went to the police and told them I had been grooming him. She's trying to get me imprisoned, and he's not helping with the issue. He's not admitting to or denying the allegations, which is making people think that I'm intimidating him. I've never engaged in any inappropriate behavior or even hinted at or considered having such relations with him when he was a minor. I helped take care of her kids and away from her abusive husband, and this is the thanks I get? He was a child to me then, and I hadn't seen him in years. He's not a child anymore. Update 2. Hello, it's been over a year since I last updated. And it's been a tough few months. Even though I won the case that my sister-in-law laid against me, my husband still divorced me. Part of me was hoping that things would go back to the way they were after the case. But I should have guessed otherwise when I got absolutely no support from him during the proceeding of the case. I'm still hated by the family and ostracized by my community, as the rumor about me being a child groomer spread. I'm too scared to go back to my hometown. I moved away to another town as soon as the alimony started rolling in. I miss my now ex-husband and have been constantly trying to reach out, but he wants nothing to do with me. While the root of all our problems has moved on with his life like nothing happened. As if he wasn't the one who took the initiative to seduce me or didn't consent to that relationship and didn't even try to help me during the case. It could have ended quickly if he had spoken up or he hadn't done what he did at the family reunion. Now I'm the only one who's left as an outcast. I have to live off of the alimony now because I have a record as a predator. I can no longer teach or find a job due to that record, even though I was cleared. I'm now living off my savings and working odd jobs here and there. If you asked if it was all worth it, I would say no. Few hours of sexual gratification is really not worth it at all. What a selfish cow. OP, your actions have led to a series of disastrous consequences, and it's tough to find any sympathy in this situation. First, you engaged in an affair with your husband's nephew, a young man who should have been considered family. You betrayed your husband's trust and disrupted the family dynamic. Then, when your affair came to light, instead of accepting full responsibility, you chose to blame your sister-in-law and tried to deflect your guilt. Accusations of grooming are severe, and even though the legal system ruled in your favor, the damage to your reputation and relationships was already done. Your poor choices have caused irreparable harm to your life, career, and the lives of those around you. The fact that you long for your ex-husband's support is ironic, considering you were the one who shattered your marriage. You deserve everything bad that happened. I just hope your husband recover from all this trauma his unworthy wife caused. Story 2. Last weekend, I cheated on my husband. We got married about 2 years ago and have been together for 4. We had a very rushed wedding that wouldn't have happened at all if it weren't for a kind of ultimatum put on me by my job. If we weren't married, we couldn't live together, and we'd be keeping a long-distance relationship. He was my first boyfriend, first kiss, first everything. My friends didn't like him, and my family didn't like him much either. He was a self-identified asshole with a love for arguing and showing people how wrong they are. A lot of changes were occurring at the time, with my recent military enlistment, which led me to cling to the only thing I knew for certain, which was him. So we got married. He moved to where I'm stationed now, and naturally, I paid for our housing, bills, and food. He had ambitions to go to college here, but only got halfway through enrollment, not putting in the effort to secure student aid or find a scholarship. Within a couple months, he got a minimum wage job with benefits and advancement opportunities, but had a habit of spending his paychecks on junk food and pot. I asked if he could contribute financially, and he took over the internet bill. Then he quit his job, saying that people at his work hated him and whispered behind his back. He got another job at a corner liquor store with poor advancement and no benefits. I talked to him about getting a second job, and he said he doesn't want to, and would rather quit his current job and stay unemployed. This coming from a perfectly healthy man in his 20s who spends the majority of his time at home browsing the internet or playing video games, to his wife who works over 50 hours a week. I had been aware of and unhappy about this arrangement for months, especially feeling that he could at least pick up the slack on keeping our home clean. So I talked to him about it. We argued about this on at least a bi-weekly basis, sometimes with him shutting the conversation down entirely, as he is wont to do. But eventually he heard me out and I began seeing little changes. Like a load of dishes done here and there. It was progress, and I always made sure to thank him when he took the initiative on cleaning up. Nevertheless, we've both come close to splitting up at least 3 times in the past year. But usually one of us will call uncle and back down. It was around this time that I began talking to a coworker of mine more often. We had always had chemistry and had this ability to have a flowing conversation, which I never really got with my husband. I opened up to him about being dissatisfied with my marriage. He was the only person I really spoke to on the subject. Last weekend, I asked if he'd like to go out for some beers. He accepted. What followed was one of the nicest evenings I've had with anybody. We eventually confessed our mutual attraction, and I'm ashamed at how easy it was to go back to his place and cheat entirely on my husband. I was racked with guilt throughout, but that didn't stop me. The next morning was physically painful with the guilt, and I was shocked at my own actions. I went home and told my husband what I had done. He was floored, of course, and we spent the next 2 days talking more openly than we ever had before, and made love more times than we usually did in a whole week. I really tried to come to terms with the idea of being with my husband for the rest of my life, flaws and all. But the terrible truth is that I don't trust him with the most basic of things. I give him a laundry key, he loses it. I buy him a bike, he leaves it unchained overnight in a shitty neighborhood. I give him the spare key to my car, whoops, now that key's gone too. How am I supposed to trust him when we have bigger, more important things in our lives, like children or a mortgage? I can't see him holding a career, and he's terrible at taking initiative on household things. Not to mention the way our personalities clash on a basic level. Before I cheated, I could barely have a conversation with him without being interrupted and argued at. I know I'm automatically in the wrong, having done the worst possible thing imaginable to our marriage, but now he wants to stay together. He begs me to stay with him to rebuild our marriage. Ever since I said the D word, he's been acting like a saint. Cleaning up the apartment, quitting weed, and even talking about God and saying we should go to church. Which strikes me as very out of character for him, a self-professed total atheist. He's not acting like himself anymore. He's desperate, and that just makes me want to split with him even more. Because no man should be begging his cheater wife to stay with him. We're going to marriage counseling next week. I don't know what to do about any of this. I'd like an outsider's perspective on this whole thing. I'm suspecting you feel obligated to do what he wants, work on the marriage because you are in the wrong, having cheated. But it doesn't really work that way. If you want out, just end it. It'll be better for both of you than if you drag this out any longer. You've already betrayed him, and you probably knew long before that you weren't happy. He's on his best behavior now to win you back, but it will melt into how he usually is eventually. Then you'll be back where you are now. If you fail to control your impulses again, and you'll have one more shameful memory and one more instance of betraying him. In my opinion, just save yourself and him the time and energy. This ended a long time ago.